review, my thoughts on tonight's episode of Arrow titled What We Leave Behind, which is, of course, the mid-season finale. And I thought this was a really great episode. And, obviously, the show has improved enough to the point where I'm doing these reviews again. And, it's episodes like this, because I think this season is really going back to what made Arrow so great, is going back to the grittiness and the good character development, not focusing too much on certain characters' romances and not having so much of that relationship drama, kind of dragging it down, having great characters, having great action. Because I think, I'm not going to go too much into it, but you guys know that, the last couple of seasons, the actions really suffered. I think, a lot of the choreography was bad the last couple of seasons. Of course, all the romance stuff, which I'm not going to get into. All that stuff has kind of gone away so far this season. And in this episode, I thought everything was great. A couple of things I think could have been better. I think, the Evelyn reveal of her being the one to portray the team. And it's funny because, after that moment, we don't see Evelyn at all the rest of the episode, which I thought was kind of strange. And I'll be, honest, I never liked Evelyn to begin with, because I thought, first of all, she was a Black Canary ripoff, and then she's an Artemis Croc ripoff, so, and just the way she's been written, there's nothing about her that made me like her at all. Even when she was part of the team before, there was the reveal of her being, a double agent and working with Prometheus. And so I think her reveal could have been handled a little better, and could have had a little more emotional weight to it, instead of her just, in the middle of a mission being like, I need to stop you, and, throwing the smoke and then going away, and then we don't see the rest of the episode. I think that could have been handled better. But overall, this was a really emotional, as well as, action-packed and story-driven episode. And I think, that's where the show's really starting to improve, is it's focusing more on its story and less on side things that shouldn't be too focused on. So, to get into what I really enjoyed about it, I like how this episode kind of starts out, it is Christmas time, and everyone's having their various Christmas parties, whether it's, Oliver having his mayoral Christmas party, or even them having a Christmas party down in the Arrow Cave, and having Diggle be able to spend time with his son, which made the end of the episode that much more emotional, when, Diggle is tricked into going to the safe house where, it's a trap for him to get arrested, because he's still on the loose for, the false accusation of him killing off one of the older soldiers, earlier in the season, which, I kind of forget that that's even going on, and it's obviously he's gonna get out of it, but of course, I that's where, the ending of this episode, between everything going on, it ended like a mid-season finale, I think, should, leaving you enough wanting more from the mid-season premiere, leaving you, having jaw-dropping moments, and having twists in there, and I think that's another thing that's been lacking in a couple of these various shows in their mid-season finales, where things end, but not as you would think in a mid-season finale. So that's where at least with Diggle's storyline, how that you weren't expecting that, and how the way it ends makes you want to know what's going to happen next. And I'll get to the other stuff throughout the episode as I progress in my review. I do like how even though the crossover was last week, they aren't necessarily forgetting what happened within the crossover, and they're still mentioning Diggle still being not necessarily on the fence, but him not forgetting what Barry told him about Flashpoint, and the fact that he did have a daughter in the previous timeline. So I'm glad that the writers of all these shows don't forget what just happened. It's we had a crossover, now we're never going to talk about it again. I'm glad that they're bringing some of that stuff up, even though an alien invasion is something that you think they'd be brought up multiple times. I can forgive it, because, it's the show, and it has to move forward and not keep focusing on the past, which is fine. So that's why I'm glad they brought up at least the Flashpoint aspect of it. And I did like the initial fight between Curtis and Prometheus, when he was kind of, caught by surprise as they were leaving the Oliver's mayoral party. And the drama between Curtis and Paul tonight, Paul being Curtis's husband, it could have been handled a little better. It did feel sometimes a little CW melodramatic-y. I didn't hate it. I mean, that's why one thing I do like about this show, even though I'm not super into the Curtis character, I gotta be honest, I don't feel all that much chemistry between him and the actor who plays his husband. Every time he says baby, and it doesn't feel real to me. It doesn't feel like a real romance. I'm really happy that the CW has a homosexual and a racially diverse couple in the show. I think that's great, and I think that's amazing. But at the same time, I'm not super drawn into the character emotionally, and I don't see much romantic chemistry between those two characters. So every time they were having their mini arguments throughout the episode. I mean, I think it's from a story point. It is, I do like where they're going with it. It sucks for Curtis, but at the same time, for me, as an audience member, it's hard for me to buy into a relationship that I don't I just don't believe it. That's just my problem with it. But the fight scene again leading up to that when Curtis first gets in the hospital was cool nonetheless. And I love the flashbacks in this episode. Obviously, you could tell those weren't actually from first season. That they did film it, in the now, and then they just made it look like for season 1, which I thought was cool because I love how this season is, focusing so much on what happened in season 1 with Oliver and the list and finding out who Prometheus is. And so it seems like they're teasing that Prometheus was the son of that guy, and it's like I'm not 100% sure. I just feel like if that's the reveal and he's just he's just some guy who Oliver killed his dad and he was an insignificant character that they didn't even show in season 1. I feel like that's a bit of a letdown because I wanted more from a reveal, especially a mid-season finale reveal. But maybe they'll change it up, and who knows? I just think like that could have been handled a little better. But the flashbacks, nonetheless, kind of seeing how much Oliver, kind of like last week's episode, seeing how much he has progressed, considering this episode kind of showed how dark he was again in season 1. And I kind of forget that considering how much the show has changed from first season to now. When first season, everything was just dark and gritty and realistic and all these fight sequences and Oliver killing all these people. And now we're at a point where, he's fighting aliens. So seeing the show and how it's progressed since then, I think, it's a cool counterbalance to what was going on in the episode, giving us a little more backstory of what's going on in this episode and how it ties into what was going on this time in first season. Even though this time in first season, Oliver was dealing, with Merlin and all that stuff. But I still think it was cool flashbacks nonetheless. And I haven't enjoyed the flashbacks this season. I feel like this is the first time since season 2 that the flashbacks have actually had emotional weight to them, and they've actually been kind of cool. Especially having Dolph Lundgren as like the big bad of the flashbacks. I think that's kind of cool. But before seeing season 1 and this episode, and seeing like a younger Felicity, a younger Diggle, a younger Oliver, I thought it was kind of cool nonetheless. Even though I can tell that they did film it in the present day and they didn't exactly take stuff from season 1. But it was cool seeing again where we've come to where we are now. I like seeing that in this episode and seeing the progression in Oliver's character. And I think one of the big things in this episode was Oliver unintentionally killing Felicity's boyfriend. And I think that I knew that something was going to happen to her boyfriend, Billy, because, first of all, again, I didn't believe the chemistry of her and her boyfriend. I think they just kind of brought him into the show just to kind of, keep Oliver and Felicity apart, which I think is a good thing, keep Oliver and Felicity apart because the romance, at least for a lot of us, didn't work. But at the same time, like, Felicity doesn't need to be in a relationship. But I do think what happened in the episode, like, it was an emotional scene because Prometheus' whole thing is reminding Oliver that he is a killer, and he has, he hurts everyone in his life, whoever he comes into contact with, and that's kind of one of the themes in this episode, is that, Oliver screws up more than he wants to admit it. And that he did kill all these people. You can't just forget that. And that's when we did have that line from the flashbacks of, like, your actions are going to have unforeseen consequences. That does play into what's going on in the present day. And when he has that fight scene with Prometheus, and we do see Prometheus kind of like manipulating Oliver, and that's where, like, Oliver got to the point where he was immediately going to try to kill Prometheus, and that's how he ends up killing Billy. And it was an emotional scene, and I found, like, when Felicity found out, first of all, I was worried that Oliver was going to keep it a secret because that's just how these shows go. But I do think it was an emotional scene that worked out well. I do like that Felicity believed Oliver in that moment, and that she didn't, like, take it out against Oliver, and that she knows it was Prometheus, not Oliver's fault. That he's obviously, Oliver was the one who, released the arrows, and his arrows were the ones who killed Billy, but it wasn't Oliver's fault, and I'm glad that she understood that. And that it wasn't going to create more. I know it's going to create more drama down the line, but I'm glad in that moment Felicity knew it wasn't Oliver's fault, and it wasn't going to create unnecessary tension that the show doesn't need it right now. So that's where in that moment I did like Felicity's character in that moment, because again she's been really on the fence. Like this season, she has been a better character, but still, like, she has some of those moments where it's just she has some, like, really cringy lines, and it's just I don't know. And, of course, now that I can finally talk about what this episode ended on, I really found, the way this episode ended, Oliver being such a bad emotional state, and you know, with Diggle being captured, and then you know Oliver having that moment with that girl he's been dating. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but everything kind of ending on a sour note, and then Oliver going down to the Arrow Cave and finding out and finding Laurel down there. So of course, like I know that like Katie Cassidy was gonna come back to all these shows at some point, you know, because she was in last week's episode, but she did sign a deal with the CW that she would appear. She kind of has the same contract as the, you know, like John Barrowman and a lot of the other actors who are in Legend of Tomorrow, where they can pop up in all the different shows. I don't know if she's alive or if that's just another figment of Oliver's imagination. Maybe what happened with Flashpoint did somehow affect, you know, Laurel coming back. I don't know. Obviously, it's a cool thing for the show to end on, and of course, you guys know me. I'm a huge Laurel Lance fan, and seeing Katie Cassidy back in the role, especially 2 episodes in a row, I'm really just excited to see her back, and hopefully that it's the actual Laurel and not some figment of Oliver's imagination. And yeah, overall, again, I thought this was a great mid-season finale, and the show has really, really improved this season, and I'm happy to be watching it and reviewing it again, and I hope you guys are feeling the same way about watching the show. So yeah, that's going to be it for me. So if you guys like what you see here, go ahead and hit subscribe below. I do review all the other DC TV shows as well. Unfortunately, Supergirl's mid-season finale was last week during the crossover event, so there was no review to do this week. Last night I did my review for the mid-season finale of The Flash. Tomorrow night is going to be the Legend of Tomorrow mid-season finale. If you guys check that video out, as well as all the other various videos I'm going to be putting up on my channel throughout the holidays. And if you guys don't check them out, again, thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button and hit subscribe for all the other stuff I'll be doing throughout the holidays. Happy holidays, guys. Merry Christmas. All that jazz. And I'll see you next time. Have a good one.